This is a great, easy opening for white, whether you're playing weekend tournaments against class players or online blitz, because it's very easy for black to get into trouble just by playing naturally. They really have to study the line and know the refutation to get out of it. That's what makes it very good, especially against class players. But I've also beaten expert level players with it too in tournament conditions. In fact, one I beat in 14 moves, and I'll show that in another video. But it's the Ponziani opening, and it's natural enough. E4, E5, knight F3, knight C6. Now, Ponziani is C3 here. And, most tournament players below, class level, below 2,000, just don't study this opening because it looks, if you look from their perspective, well, first of all, you've got all these openings to learn anyway you got to prepare against. E4, D4, C4, knight F3, and all the different lines, so you just don't have time. You figure, well, if somebody's going to play this weak opening, I mean, it looks weak because you just move here, and now they're stuck defending this pawn. They either have to do an awkward move like that, awkwardly block the bishop with the queen, or do a weak move like this, in which case you would just, dominate. So that's what black's thinking. He sees you make this move, or he's thinking about preparing for a tournament. He says, if they play that, I'm just going to go over the board. And because, there's just too much to memorize. Now, this is a mistake. Knight F6 is actually not the best play for black. The best play is D5. And then as white, you can move out here and, threatening to take this pawn and pin the knight there. You get a very sharp game here. So if black plays it properly, if they have researched it, you still get a very good game. And the theory is not very deep, so you're soon just playing over the board, one-on-one chess. More likely he's going to make a mistake and you'll win the game, rather than having to play your preparation against his. So that's if he plays it right, but most are going to go knight F6. And the continuation here is D4, and it's a gambit. It's like the Scotch gambit. Now, in a tournament situation, almost certainly he's not going to take this pawn, because if somebody's not familiar with the opening, he says, well, obviously he wants me to take it, so I'm not going to take it, because there must be a trap there. Now, let's go back to white's perspective. In a blitz game, they do tend to take it, because they see material, you take it. That's kind of the strategy in a blitz game. And I'll show you how that can lead into trouble later. But for now, in a tournament situation, most class players below 2,000 are going to play this line, whether over the board or playing actually knowing the line. And here, your response is not to take it back, but to kick the knight here. And there's two sensible places to put it, on D5 or on E4. And I've found in tournament play, people go to tournaments to win, and they spend all that money for the travel and the hotel and the entry fee. They're not going to do sort of passive-looking moves like this, and this looks passive from his perspective. Because if you look here, you block the queen pawn, and where are you going to move it after that? So they're going to tend to not play that one, but play knight E4. And sure, you come out here. This is your next move, and he figures, well, I'll just move it out of the way, or I will protect it. But he gets into problems if he goes over here, and I beat an expert level player in 14 moves when he did this, because then if you go that line, you just kick his knight, and actually the correct place is here, but he sees a fork, and that's kind of difficult. You can get out of it, but often he'll play that, and that's how I beat the guy in 14 moves. He did that, and I just dominated the center. But I'll do that in another video. Usually they're going to just play knight E4. You put your queen out here, and they're going to defend it. Now, the proper way to defend it is F5, and that's scary to a class level player because you're opening your king up to attack, and it's actually a pawn sack that you have to do. You actually sack that pawn so that you can do D5, and you can continue, and he has to play very precisely. You're still going to win a pawn. He could trade queens here, he could block it, but you're going to get this pawn. So you go, you start out right with an advantage, or he trades queens and you go into the endgames with an advantage. That's if he does the right line, and more likely he's going to think D5, although this en passant makes it tricky. With this line, he's still pinned here, so how does he protect it? however he does it, you're still going to attack him and likely win that pawn. So both continuations are pretty good for you. Let's say he does d5. This happened in several games for me. Take an en passant. The other way to defend is f5. And again, it looks like you have an advantage here. Even if you decide to trade queens, I mean, this is his best response. Otherwise, you're just going to dominate the center. And now he has to take you. If he doesn't take you, this for him, going to his position, if he's just playing over the board here, wow, this sure looks enticing because you castle, you got the open file for your king. But here, well, you get a tempo here, develop your bishop, and he moves back there, well, whatever. But you take him, and now his pawn formation is messed up. Not only are you a pawn up, 3 against 2 here, but your 3 against 3 is with his busted up pawn formation. So you really go into the end game with an advantage. And if you put this in the computer, it scores you about 1.5 points ahead, or 2.5 points ahead actually, just because of your superior endgame potential. And here you'd want to trade down. So really, no matter how he plays, if he plays right, you're more likely to come out with an advantage, unless he knows the line exactly. And the best line, again, instead of knight f6 is d5, and you just go into a sharp game. But you can still get away with, he can still have a fairly decent game with knight d5. Or there's different ways. Just look it up. But here's what happens in blitz games. In blitz games, you do this gambit. Well, come out to here again. c3. He goes knight f6, d4, and they see this and they just they see this and they grab it with knight takes. They do this line, and this has a trap, and I'll show you the trap that blitz players, bullet players always fall for. I beat somebody rated well in real life. He was an IM. And I forgot what his blitz rating was, or bullet rating, 2200, 2300. But I beat him with this line. He takes it. Instead of trying to kick him with your queen, you push here. Now, his only sensible place, so he can either go back there, which seems passive. So almost certainly he's going to go here. Now you take the pawn back. Now, if he's not real comfortable with his opening, especially in a bullet situation, you see him come down here and take this pawn. The natural move is d6 here, because not only you kick the knight, you stop the pawn, and you open your bishop. That just seems the natural move. But that's a trap. Because, let's go back here, he does d6. You come out here, check, and you trade, and now you actually win a piece. Well, actually, there's all kinds of combinations where he either loses a piece or it's a checkmate. Or well, I guess can't get worse than a checkmate. He can lose a rook, or there's just all kinds of combinations here. I mean, if he gets his king out of the way, well, then you got check, discover check with the bishop, and if he tries to block it, he loses the piece. So, bullet player's going to move out of the way, and then you got mate here. And again, if he blocks it, I mean, there's so many ways he can get into trouble. And that happens when he plays this natural move. The way out of it is unnatural because, I mean, this is the way you have to get out of it. But that's unnatural because you think, well, I'm just going to bust open my king side, or one way or the other. So that's unnatural. So that's why this is a great opening for both tournament players who probably haven't prepared for it and will get in trouble if they just play over the board. And it's also good for online blitz and bullet players who can easily fall for a trap.